this one's a little bit different. Instead of doing a strictly military site, I'm doing what is definitely a medieval site. We're here today at CREAKE Abbey. It's in North Norfolk. It's not far from Nelson's birthplace, which I previously covered. It's not far from places like Baconsthorpe Castle and Castle Rising. What we have behind me is possibly Britain's unluckiest abbey. For the Americans and Canadians, etc., who are not familiar, the fictional Downton Abbey refers to a manor house or stately home built on the site of a previously dissolved religious house, an abbey dissolved during the reign of Henry VIII. This one never made it to the reign of Henry VIII, and this was actually dissolved round about 40 years before Henry VIII started destroying all the rest of the religious houses. And if you look behind me, you'll see here the walls are heavily cut down up to where those people are, and the reason for that is this end of the building burned down, and it now involves Richard III, King Richard III, the famous disputed English king, and later Margaret Beaufort, who was the mother of Henry VII. So we have a very strong Wars of the Roses connection here. So what we got? This end should be the nave. Behind me, these patches here would have been the pillars. Great roof coming up above me, and there would have been a great door here. As you can tell, the door's gone. I'll show you that perhaps in detail in a minute. The door was actually moved to up there between what would be the chancel arch. Moved up there, and this entire end of the building was walled off. And if you look at, if you can see that arch over there, I'll show it in detail in a minute. That used to be an open arch, but when the building was shortened radically, it was filled in, new archway was put in there, and this entire church from here has been moved up into the chancel end. So this is a building that's had a very hard life. And just when they got all the work finished, just when it was all done, just when it was ready to be used again by this group of ecclesiastics, these monks, people with friars here, they all caught the plague and died. Thus it ended up being redundant, passed into the hands of Henry VII. He gave it to his mother, Margaret Beaufort, and she in turn endowed it to a college in Cambridge, and it became part of the money that they raised from farming, renting this place out, and it turned effectively into a farm. So this is CREAKE Abbey, North Norfolk. So here we are at the CREAKE Abbey sign. That's a later 18th century drawing which shows a little bit more of the remains. That was what was visible just behind me a moment ago. And if we then scroll down a little bit further to there, we learn, you can do a freeze frame on this. It was originally founded in the early 13th century community of Augustinians, Augustinian canons. In Britain, those would have been known as the Austins, the Austin friars with the Augustinians, sort of contraction of the name. They ran a hospital for the sick and needy, but a disastrous fire destroyed the church in the 1480s, and disease claimed the lives of all the canons by 1506. So, bit of an unlucky abbey. This isn't one of the ones that was smashed up or destroyed by Henry VIII. Right, this signboard, which unfortunately is completely fly blown at the moment, we've got a lot of flies here, records that it was known as St Mary of the Meadows at Creake, founded around about 1206 privately, and then later developed from there, hospital interests. But the important thing here is the map to the, I'll leave this on so you can freeze frame it if you wish to read more. So I'll just give you a little bit closer there. And you want to freeze that, feel free. Bit of a close up on that bit. Sorry about the flies, but I can't do anything about that. And there it is, functioning as a hospital. Right, so you want to freeze frame that and read it, feel free. Now if we come over here to the map, now Let's get this right. The nave here is the bit that was destroyed by fire, and the canons effectively retreated into that upper area, and then you've got other buildings and a cloister off to this side. We can't go over there because that is now part of a private house. So plenty more buildings off to our right, but that is now privately owned. So I'm going to pan up to here again. You can now see the full extent of the site. The cloister would have been behind this wall here. This wall is almost certainly not a church wall. I think that's a garden wall. The church wall here would have had windows in it. The cloister would have been here, and I don't think that door there is original either. I think that door has been moved from there. It's almost exactly the same width. Now remember, this is the original front of the abbey along here. The great main door would have been there, and strangely that gap there exactly matches that gap there, and I think the arch from here was actually moved down to there, but you'll see that in a moment. Now, as part of the rebuild after the fire, the monks had to fill in this aisle arch here. This would have been the great chancel arch which you could walk through. That's been filled in. The original front gate has been moved and placed there, and that Nathaniel Buck picture which you saw just now on the main board shows that originally filled in the 18th century. So it looks like it's been knocked through later, possibly to turn that into the building into a barn or somewhere to store wagons, God knows what else. It could function as a barn in the 18th century. Worthy of note here, especially worthy of note, this building would have had a rood screen. Now can you see here there's a series of holes cut into the stone. That is not part of the cutting up the building later. That is where there would have originally been a timber wood rood screen across here. The mysteries of the mass would have been performed on that side, and the parish or monks would have been out, or canons would have been out that side. Same over here. You can see extensive notching timbers here, and the holy rood would have stood across here, and it's the barrier between the congregation and the priest and the higher-ups performing the mysteries of the mass, somewhere around about here on the altar. And a bell would be rung to indicate the transubstantiation has taken place, and then the wine and wafers would come out, which of course represented the blood and body of Christ, and the bell would tell everybody outside behind me now that it's all taken place. Over here, I don't believe that is an original window door. It's in the wrong position, but there's a filled in one. Now that, I believe, is the original night stairs. The dormitory for the canons or the monks would be up here. They would come down here and come into here for their 3 AM, 2 AM, whatever time, stupid time they were getting up for their night services. That, I think, is the night stair. I believe this arch has been taken from somewhere else in the building. It might even be a window, but I think in the Victorian or Regency time it's been brought in here and it's become a garden feature. Now let's have a look at the information board and walk across to here. This is the next information board on site. Tells us a little bit more about what happened. That is the cut down abbey. We have just walked from this section here. The building at this end has been completely demolished. It's the white area there, and the whole building has been reduced down to a very restrained area. That is because the Richard III grant didn't cover a full rebuild, so the monks have had to economise, chop the building down and just reduce it to effectively just a little chapel for their own use. And no sooner had they done that than the last abbot died in 1506. Now the dissolution of the abbey started, well, middle 1530s. This never made it. I'm going to go up to the information board so you can read that, and that should give it to us. And if we go here, basically says if you can do a freeze frame on that, fire was about 1584, so well into the period of Richard III. Richard III was moved with pity and made a generous gift towards the rebuilding programme, and a decade later Sir William Calthorpe gave them another £74 for making the choir and the presbytery, which is just behind me. And then over here it says none of this went on to restore the abbey's glory, and things got worse and worse. Having barely recovered, the community was tragically struck by disease. One by one the canons seemed to have been killed by plague. Finally the abbot died in 1506 and it became property of the crown. Now coming to the crown, which of course is Henry VII, brings us to Margaret Beaufort. Margaret Beaufort was a very pious woman. I think she said she has saint's knees in the Philippa Gregory stories, and passes to Margaret Beaufort, who died in 1509, and in the 3 years between the abbot dying and her dying, passes to Christ College in Cambridge, and they got the benefit of any rent etc. from the building next door. And we're not allowed to go next door, but I can just show you a little bit. Just through here there's quite a nice garden, but almost certainly that building over there almost certainly contains more of the abbey domestic buildings, dormitories etc., and the cloister would be through there. But of course this is all private now. But I think they still own the abbey site, but English Heritage now manage it. Now if I can carefully walk this way, we're on bumpy ground, there's molehills. I don't walk very well. Much of this has been badly chopped about, but we do have signs of further work during its farming period. That there was a vast window which has been very crudely filled in. This was some sort of side chapel, possibly a lady chapel. And over here, that would almost certainly have been a piscina, P-I-S-C-I-N-A, where you pour away holy water or Holy Communion wine that was unwanted. You pour it into a hand basin there, which drains into the ground, makes the ground that the abbey stands on even holier, and prevents it being misused for black magic or illicit purposes. Meanwhile over here we have almost certainly where church plate, we're talking about the chalices, the pattern plates, the stuff that the communion wafer would have been kept on, probably at least silver if not gold. And again above you can see the building has been chopped about. That ledge, for example, suddenly turns into another material, and indication of considerable amount of robbing of material. Look down there. For those not aware, you probably think, oh, it's a great shame this building's gone this way, but Norfolk is one of those buildings that's not blessed with good building stone, and old buildings in Lincolnshire and Norfolk especially are much prone to stone robbing. And indeed I can think of at least 3 castles in Lincolnshire that have virtually ceased to exist, largely due to subsequent stone robbing. If you don't have any decent building stone in the area, you'll steal what you can find. So this is CREAKE Abbey. Right, before I go, I'll just mention this on the matter of stone robbing. You'll see there that a lot of nice dressed stone has been picked away from that flint rubble core, particularly on this side, but they've left the stuff on that side. But you'll also notice at the bottom that some easy to access material has been left there. Now if you go to nearby Binham Priory, that features on 10, 11, maybe 12 bits of wall, each at different heights above the ground. You can see just, where are we? Just here. You can see there's a height there. Why would you leave the decent stone at the bottom when you're having to reach all the way up there to pick off the good stuff? Now the Binham one really puzzled me, but it's interesting to see an example of it here. This building was being destroyed, pulled down, devastated. Someone's come in and they wanted the good dressed stone that used to be on there. But there was so much of it already on the ground that the ground level, I'll pull this out for a second, the ground level was already up here due to a demolition layer of smashed timber, rubble, etc. building up, building up, building up. And they've actually stood on a demolition layer here to pick off what's above. They didn't bother going down for it. It wasn't worth it. It was too much effort. And then when the archaeologists have come in here later, they're the guys who've gone, oh look, still got the base. So that tells you that the time that all the material above was being picked off, that bit below was already buried beneath a metre of smashed flint, smashed decent stones, smashed timber. The lead would have been taken away quite quickly. It's high value material, but it gives you an idea of just what a poor state this building was in when the removal of the stone robbing took place higher up. And those nice bits have been carted off and taken elsewhere. I can show you one place where they've ended up. I only spotted this today. We know that this wall here is a later insert. How do we know it's a later insert? Because there's some gorgeous stone mouldings sitting on top of that wood. You see them? 1, 2, possibly 3. And that is surefire indication. If I pan out to there, where are we? Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Those are different stone mouldings that have been ripped off from another part of this building and quickly thrown into this very crude wall, which I presume some local farmer has put up, 16th century. So he's just torn something down from one side. He wanted the quick wall up there because they're going to possibly use it as a barn or a stable. And it's a great shame that so many of these buildings have gone this way. And in fact, if you look up higher to there, there's another decent piece of dressed stone just suddenly thrown into a rubble wall. So this is a final look at Creake Abbey. Hope you've enjoyed it. It's looking back towards the entrance where we came in. Final look over here. Final look over there. If you've enjoyed this, please feel free to subscribe or give us a thumbs up. This isn't straight medieval history, it isn't straight military history, this is more medieval history, but I can tell you that Richard III and Margaret Beaufort were both involved in the sad history of what I believe to be Britain's unluckiest abbey. Creake Abbey, Norfolk. This is Warspite, signing off. Have a good day. This has been a Warspite production. If you've enjoyed this, please leave a thumbs up. If you've really enjoyed it, please feel free to subscribe. I look forward to seeing you next time. This is Warspite out, and have a very good day.